In 29 years, Dwayne Clark built one of the most decorated senior living companies in the United States. 39 buildings, 3,000 employees, 60,000 residents served, 2.5 billion in assets. Ernst and Young Entrepreneur of the Year, featured in Forbes, the New York Times, and NBC. What most people don't know is that he built all of it by telling investors something they didn't want to hear. The employee comes before the profit. Today, we find out why. Dwayne, there's a story about a young boy in a small apartment who spent an entire week eating nothing but potato soup because that was all his family could afford. Most people hear that story and see poverty, not much opportunity that's about to happen. I hear that story and see the blueprint for a multi-billion-dollar empire built on empathy. I'm Ashton Joshi, and today we are architecting the inevitable with the man who proved that in senior housing, if you put the employee first, the profit follows. Dwayne, welcome to the series.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I want to stay right there for a second because that story is so powerful. But most people do not understand what it takes to scale or take these emotions that you have test and put it towards something real. So how does a person scale from eating potato soup for a week to managing a real estate empire without losing their soul?
Well, first of all, I just want to make a slight modification in something you said. We ate potato soup because that's all we could afford. We couldn't even afford it. My mom was a cook in a restaurant, and she had to steal the potatoes, which we paid back. So we couldn't even afford to buy the potatoes. We had to steal them, and she paid them back with interest, as she says. When she got paid a couple weeks later. I think one of the things that I would just impress on your audience is when you have some kind of trauma, when you have some kind of unpleasant situation that you're going through, when you have some kind of thing that you're like, this is so hard. Why is the world so unfair to me? There's one thing I would ask everyone to do. Look at it, and I believe in God. Not everyone does, but I always say God's really given me a gift here, right? There's a huge gift for me in this, and the old expression is the only way to get through it is to go through it, right? And so when I look back on my childhood, when I look back on eating potato soup for 8 or 9 days, not having the latest tennis shoes, not having the clothes that all the cool kids wore, not having a nice car, all those things, right, that we think are so darn important as teenagers. I look and say, but what it gave me in turn was this gift of empathy, right? I last week I was in our building in Ventura talking to the dishwasher who'd been with us for 25 years. I have walked in those shoes. I've been the dishwasher. I've been the guy that's been a waiter in a restaurant. I've been the guy that's picked up dog poop in the yards for money. I've been those guys. So all those things are gifts for me. They provided the training, the empathy, the foundation for how I want to lead. And my dad was not a member of the country club. I didn't even come from a two-parent family. My dad left when I was 6 years old. As horrible as all that was, he was a alcoholic and abusive and everything else. All that was a gift, right? Because now I'm a phenomenal dad, but I wouldn't be a phenomenal dad if I didn't have those things happen to me, right? So sometimes the pain you go through is shaping you in a way that builds so much character and so much empathy and so much knowledge of how you're going to walk in the world.
Wow, that how you frame things is everything. And I guess when you talk about, you mentioned your employee that has been here for 25 years as a dishwasher.
Right.
That's remarkable, especially because in this industry, the biggest mistake operators typically make is burning out their staff. With the assisted living turnover hovering around 85%. How did you create the frameworks to foster loyalty like that? I know you've done ideas like the Dream Big, employee lottery. And what does it take to convince investors that employees must be number one, even before residents?
Well, I don't think investors always agree with that. In fact, I can remember with my partner, when we first started Aegis, having a big meeting with a group of institutional investors. And, he was given his pitch and he said, Dwayne, tell him how much money we're going to make. And I went on this diatribe about we're going to have the greatest culture. We're going to be an employee first company. And I could see his blood pressure going up and his head about to explode. And he goes, I need to see you in the hallway. He took me out the hallway. He goes, don't tell them that crap. They don't care about that crap. What they really care about is how much money they're going to make. And I go, well, no, you don't get it. If we don't satisfy our line staff, those are the first touch employees, right? Those are the first
Yeah.
contact. That's what makes your customers happy or sad. If we don't appease them, then you're going to have angry line staff giving angry care to frail residents, and that's not going to work. This is how we build a successful company. So we didn't always agree on that, and so I'm not sure. I don't know what percentage of investors would agree with that. Which investors would disagree with that? And some would nod their head, kind of in a sympathetic way, but not really believe it. Like, yeah, I hear all that all the time, right? But the reality is, what do you put behind that theory, And it's why we created the Potato Soup Foundation, because of my story, right? It's why we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. And my goal, and I initially seeded it with some other senior executives who seeded the foundation, but my goal wasn't that the senior management team was just going to keep money put into there. My goal was to create a culture, a family of people helping people. So today, I can honestly say I think there's over 850 people that contribute to Potato Soup Foundation. And I tell people, it's not a matter if you contribute 50 cents out of your paycheck or a dollar or whatever. That the amount is insignificant to me. What is significant to me is the fact that you're helping your fellow man, that we're a family and families help family, right? And we're a family-owned company. So that's the difference between us and other people, is it's a family-owned company where culture is critically important. And when we can do that, and I would say out of the 850 people that have done it, 750 have never given to anything, right? So to convince these people to be charitable was huge. And so that's something I'm extremely proud of.
I love that. Home office, not corporate.
Exactly.
I love that. So that does, I love how you framed the whole investor, like maybe investors don't per se see it at first, and it may seem like counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you put it all together. That's how the residents have the experiences that they do at
We have a
Aegis.
rule called the 90-90-90. In the first 90 feet, in the first 90 seconds, 90% of your perception will be made up, right? So as a concierge, when that person first walks in the door, do you stand up and greet them and say, "Hey, we're excited to have you here," or do you go on with your phone and looking through your papers and the person's standing there for 10 minutes? So much because people come to senior housing with a lot of mistrust, right? And so when they come to us, our goal is to constantly de-escalate that distrust, right? To tap it down. And so it's very, very
Hmm.
important for us to look and say, what are the things that we can do that constantly builds trust and eliminates mistrust in us, right? And so it's the little things that we do, the way they're welcomed, the way they see people interacting. Are we giving residents hugs? Are residents smiling? Is there activity? Are there no smells in the building? Do we not have, a loudspeaker paging people? I mean, all these things when people walk through, because they have this preconceived notion of what it is. And so our job is to build trust. I often talk
Trust.
about, you have the customer on one mountain and the care staff on the other side of the mountain. And we have to build this bridge. And the only way to build the bridge is with kind of these trust bricks, one brick at a time, one trust element at a time, that builds the bridge to the other side. And not all companies do a great job of that. I think we do a really good job of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That does bring me to what I think is like coming to the industry. I mean, if you are ever worried that AI will replace human empathy, just look at healthcare. How does assisted living adapt to a world where robotics handle the physical labor, and what happens to the culture of care?
Well, I have had the opportunity to meet with some of the greatest leaders of AI in the country. A couple of close friends of mine are very involved in that. I just We just had a guy at my house talk to about 8 CEOs that wrote a book. I think it's called AI Leadership, and he's consulted with the Chinese government, with the CIA, with the FBI, with all these people. And the question I asked him was, what will be the last industry? And he didn't know what I did. I said, what will be the last industry that will be impacted by AI? And he said, healthcare. And I said, tell me why that is. And he goes, well, as human beings, we still need human touch. And even if you have the best Elon Musk robot that, has a nice face and can dance and do all these things, it's still the element of reassurance and touch that is incredibly important. Now, is AI going to change and robotics going to change surgeries? Absolutely. The issue of, botched surgeries that, where a surgeon performs surgery 97% time correctly. Well, great. It's going to go to 99.999 with robotics, right? And
Yeah.
so, between AI and robotics, it is going to change healthcare, but it's not going to change hands-on care. And that's the difference. So when you need a person to reassure you before you go into surgery, when you need someone compassionate taking care of you after you get out of surgery, when you need somebody that, at the assisted living community that helps you after you just had the hip replacement, that's all, empathy based. And that's nowhere near in sight in the next 10 years with AI taking its place.
I love that. And what do you think in terms of, I believe when it comes to the industry, one of the most discussed topics is demographics, but not as many people talk about systems in the industry. And I'm sure viewers, you've had frustrating software experiences, but there is a massive tech gap in senior housing. So, Dwayne, what do you think are two specific pieces of technology that the industry is absolutely desperate for right now, but execution across the board has been completely poor?
Well, this could be a 3-hour podcast if I went down all the examples, because I am pitched on a weekly basis about 3 times a week for something that has to do with technology, some system, some app, some, whatever it is. And my son, Adam, who's the president of our development and new business, he worked for Microsoft. So he's got a very big tech background. And, I just pass them on to him because my technology you could put in a thimble. But the reality of the situation is technology is changing so quickly, right? The thing that a business has to be careful of is you may get some piece of technology that in 6 months it's obsolete, right? And it may be the greatest thing and sound great, and they may have a platform for it. But I don't like being on the bloody edge of technology. I'm a stalwart in terms of I like to be the guy that's, after it's tested 47 times to Sunday, says, okay. And then the other thing you have to look at is what's my return on my investment? How quickly can I prove this out? And what's my return on my investment going to be? Is it going to be in 12 months? Am I going to see it immediately? Is it going to be 5 years? How will I test it? How will I audit that? How will I look at that return and be able to calculate it? I would say right now, one of the things that we haven't got down, my wife was a trauma nurse for many years in Seattle. And when we first, actually before we got married, she started a company called Nurses to Go. And what she would do is she would go into assisted living communities and she'd say, you can pay me $10 an hour for my time. But if I find care that's being given but not charged for, I want 50 of 2 months of care that's not being charged for as a bonus. And they're like, well, we'll do that deal all day long, right? So she'd go in and she would find thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars in doing an audit. And the reason for that is we're taking people at 82, 83 years of age, and their care needs change hourly. And because of that, because of who we hire heartfelt care managers who are loving and, coddle our residents as we want them to, right? They're not business people. So when you give a resident a care manager a care plan and say, here's the care plan, they will do that. But if the resident says, I'd like an extra shower today, or I'd like you to bring me tea every night at 10 o'clock before I go to sleep, or I'd like you to lay my clothes out, or I'd like you to press them. The care manager is not likely to capture those, those services, right? And the problem from a business standpoint, not from a care standpoint, from a business standpoint, is that consumes time, and the time has cost. And all of a sudden you're realizing that your cost is going up, your margins are shrinking, and you can't figure out why. Well, the why is because there's services that are being given that were not agreed to in the care plan that is costing the business money. And so the biggest thing is to look at real-time care. And, hospitals actually do this really well, but the difference in hospitals is it's usually a 3 or 4 day stay. It's not
Yeah.
a 2.5 year stay. So it's easier to track something. They come in every hour and they're tracking it. It's easier to do that. You took this Advil, you took your pain medication, we got you up and walked you, you went to PT, whatever. But when you got somebody that's 2.5 years, people are not as attentive for that. And so care and services slip through the cracks. And that difference is the difference between success and failure.
Wow. So in essence, acuity. This is what James from Welltower was talking about too, that if able to, like being able to identify those increased care needs in real time is a huge gap in the industry currently, and it can definitely erode profit margins and can be a reason why like a community or like either thrives or it goes under.
Exactly. Because people don't know how to track it. That's why people
Mm.
who have a level system often fail, where they have, well, this is level 1 care, this is level 2 care, this is level 3 care, level 4 care. And I've done this several times. If you go and audit because they'll say, well, if you're, an example, 1 to 10 is level 1, and 11 to 20 is level 2, and 21 to 30 is level 3. If you go and audit where those people are, if you dot map them, guess where they fall? They're at the top of the very highest point of the level. You never see people
Interesting.
at the beginning of the next level, right? Because what's happening is before they kick them into the next level, they have to be really into the next level, because they don't want someone to go up for 2 points. They don't want them to go up $500 a month. So then you have an issue that you're subsidizing care, right? Because the people that are at the bottom of that level are subsidizing the people that should be in the next level. So it's a very unfair system, and that's why we developed a system that's significant for
Points.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a whole other conversation though.
yeah.
I guess now I would like to ask, when deciding to like make a new location, the micro level on how you make these expansion decisions. Because from the outside it looks like real estate, but I have a feeling it's more than a system. So what would you say is the exact framework and set of variables, whether it's demographics, local psychographics, or real estate metrics that dictate your decision when plotting a new Aegis location on the map?
Yeah, well, it's a really good question. Between the 3 companies that I've worked for, I've probably been involved in 150 to 200 different
Wow.
locations. And so,
And you're at 38 as of now.
yeah, well, we're 39 right now, but keep in mind we sold 8 to Oakmont. We had 7 management contracts that we let go. We've sold 4 other properties. We've
Hmm.
consulted for 7 or 8. So we've been involved in over 60 properties in
Wow.
our last 29 years. But it starts with, I think one of the difficulties for senior housing operators is a lot of people want to be everywhere. And we wrote, a business plan in the very beginning that, hey, we want to be in Washington and California and Nevada. So that trims your due diligence down considerably, right? It's saying, well, we're going to go to Florida, and it's clear across the country, because there's things that are indigenous to regions, like your food, like the clothing you wear, like, you may have people in Seattle that want salmon twice a week, and you may have people in Texas that want steak 4 times a week, right? And so you have to know these idiosyncrasies about the culture. So that's important. And so that's why we said, okay, we're going to focus on metro areas. And we're an infill company. We want to manage metro areas. We don't want to go out and have one in small town USA and then have another one in small town USA. We want to develop a brand and have our flag mean something within a metro. So, we're in San Francisco, we're in Seattle, we're in LA, kind of North San Diego, Orange County. And we have one in Vegas that was kind of an experiment. So when you go into those areas, first of all, you know them well, because you know where the wealth factors are. So you're looking at home values, you're looking at household income, you're looking at net worth, you're looking at, what kind of industries propel that city, what the unemployment rate is and so on. And then it comes down to, okay, what's the proximity to medical services, to shopping, to hospitals, to, emergency services? How big's the site? What's the density? How many units can I put on it? What's the competitive view in terms of competition of like kind? What can I charge not only for rent, but for care, for entrance fees, those kinds of things. And, you have a whole analysis, you kind of throw it in the tumbler and it spits out what you can do. So, we've never failed on a project. We've done almost 50 in terms of stand-up development, and we've never failed on one. So
I love that.
yeah, we've gotten good at it to the point. I mean, we just opened in San Rafael in Marin County, and that property opened late September, and it's 50 some percent occupied already.
Right on. I do want to reference your point in your answer about like Florida. There's a lot of tailwinds that are now going to Arizona, Texas, Florida, and you mentioned like staying disciplined in Washington, California, and Nevada because that was what you originally laid out. How do you maintain that discipline when cheaper and faster growth is pulling the rest of the industry elsewhere?
I don't need to have fast nor cheap. I just need to have quality. So I mean, if we developed 1 to 2 properties a year for the next 20 years, I would be super happy. I don't want to be the guy that builds like Starbucks and has 100 new stores coming on a year, because we're dealing with people's human lives here. And so if you do anything fast, you could kill someone. I'm not willing to degrade my brand or degrade my service or to compromise our residents or to compromise my staff to make more money or to build fast. So that's just an ethos that I've abided by for 29 years. So, we have 39 buildings in 29 years. That kind of tells you the rate of pace that we've gone. So, we will continue to abide by that. And so, now I mean, if we had an opportunity to build in Phoenix or Scottsdale, we wouldn't build one, we'd build 4, so we have some brand awareness. But, if it's on the West Coast, if we could be there from our corporate office in 2 hours, approximately 2 hours, if it's in the same time zone, all those things matter, right? So, but California is bigger than Spain. So, you look at it and you say, okay, well, I've got 40 million people here and, another 8 million in Seattle, in Washington or in Seattle. And then I have, I don't know what it is, 4 or 5 million in Nevada. So, I'm not dealing with, a small demographic. I'm essentially dealing with, 53 million people. I mean, that's 17, 18% of the United States population. So
yeah, no, very true. It's just with the regulation. I mean, how do you navigate that? Because like as Washington and California, wages are increasing a lot more. Like the minimum, there's a lot of red tape one has to go through. Do you still see your future being in these like states for the next 10, 20 years?
yeah, I mean, our corporate office is in Seattle. We have, a big presence in San Francisco, LA, San Diego area. I think the difficulty is because, you have multiple customers. You have your investors as customers. You have your bank that provides debt as customers. You have your residents, you have your residents as customers. You have their families as customers. And you have your staff as customers. So you always have to please not one audience, but like an audience of 5. And most people don't realize that Washington State has the highest minimum wage in the United States. I have a friend that has the largest home care company on the East Coast. And when I tell her what we pay our care manager, she, her jaw hits the floor. And yet our care manager would say they're grossly underpaid. The average care manager, will make somewhere, I would say average care manager probably puts in 5 to 7 hours overtime a year, but they're, with overtime and holiday pay and everything else, they're probably going to make $43,000 to $45,000 a year. That's not great wages, but compare that to places like Montana or even New York, that's probably $10,000, $12,000 less.
Yeah.
So the problem with that is if you have high real estate prices, high property taxes, high wage rates, well, that's 80% of my cost, right?
Yeah.
And so guess where that cost is going to be related to? It's going to be related to the resident, right? So people are saying, well, why can't you pay $30? Well, about every dollar of price takes it up about 300, depending on the size of the building, about $300 a month to a resident. So
Yeah.
if you're going to pay $6, they're going to pay $1,800 more. You wouldn't be competitive. You couldn't do it, right? So
Hmm.
that's the challenge. It's not that we don't want to. So we try to do other things, with health insurance. I mean,
Yeah.
our Potato Soup Foundation, through education, through, we have dental insurance, we have some retirement plans for people. We have this big Winterfest thing that we do. We try to do other things that will help our people. And again, we're a family company, so we're always there in a time of need for people.
Wow. I mean, this is why you're known to be one of the best places to work.
Thank you.
And then in terms of recently I've had a conversation with your regional director of sales, Kimberly. And during that conversation, she mentioned how passionate you are about biohacking and extending health span. How
Yeah.
did exploring things like red light therapy change the way you design your communities?
Well, first of all, keep in mind, I've done this for 40 years, right? So
Yes.
I've always been curious about why people die early, why people live longer. So I've been curious about this for 40 years. And going back 37 years ago, when I was a manager of a building, we had this guy, I'll just say he was a farmer, and we had another guy who was a doctor. The doctor was probably 5'10", 140 pounds. His wife really henpecked him. She only would let him eat so much. She made him go walk after every meal. I thought, well, God, this guy's going to live to 100, right? And then we had this farmer, I'll call him Farmer Carl. Farmer Carl was a guy that he's about 5'5". He's about 280 pounds. You could hear him coming down for breakfast. I'm going to have some pigs and eggs for breakfast. And he'd scream and everybody'd laugh. And his wife just doted over him, thought he was the greatest thing. And he was always cracking jokes with me. Well, I came in one day and the doctor had died and he was 79, and Carl went on to live well into his 90s. And I
Wow.
thought, wow, that's such a dichotomy. I would have thought the opposite would have happened, right? So as I started looking at why people live so long, a lot of it has to do with your marriage, your relationships, your community circle, your purpose, your sense of humor, far more than your diet, your exercise program, or even your genetics. Genetics only controls about 23% of your lifespan. And so that got me curious, and so I started writing books about this.
Interviewed dozens of centenarians.
Oh yeah, I'm making a documentary right now where I'm doing 100 centenarians. I just interviewed my 45th. Yeah. So after I got done with this one guy's name was Ryan, he was 102. I said, Ryan, what are you going to go do now? He said, I'm going to go hit some balls on the golf course. But
I love that.
the thing is, we are entering a period of time where longevity is becoming super incredibly important. Do
Hmm.
you have any idea how big in terms of revenue the longevity industry is?
I, isn't it in trillions now? Or-
3.3 trillion.
Ridiculous. I
Yeah.
mean,
And 20 years ago it was like 50 billion. So the reality of the situation is, through AI, healthcare is going to dramatically change. I mean, I have a red light bed that I will be in here in an hour. I have, cold plunge that I go in. I have an infrared sauna. I mean, I do a variety of things. In 35 minutes, I'm having 100 different blood tests done. So I
like,
I track these things. I mean, I have a Hume band on this side, and I have an Oura ring on this side, and
is
I
that
can.
Whoop?
No, this is Hume.
Okay, Hume.
Hume, and this
Okay.
is this is an Oura
Awesome.
ring. So I compare and contrast data that they have. So I'm constantly doing research about, sleep is a critical foundational piece of longevity. Well, I
Let's
don't know about a
go.
thousand, but if and it's more about what kind of health span you have, right? If I can have good health into my 90s, that would be a blessing.
Mhm.
So I try to bring these theories that are tested and have some science backing into our communities. So we have a red light bed in Aegis of Ballard. I teach meditation to staff and residents. So we try to do a lot of these things, eat foods that are known for impressing the immune system, like lots of blueberries and, green shakes and stuff like that. So I try to bring this knowledge into people. You have to be a little bit careful when you're dealing with people that are 83. You don't want to say, hey, you should cold plunge, you're doing infrared sauna every day. It's a little
Yeah.
different for those people that it may be contraindicative of how they're doing, but I think they can probably do hyperbaric chamber, which I'm a big fan of. So
Such amazing insights. We could talk for hours, but I we do have this time, so I want to end it here. The hardest part of building an empire is not starting it, it's stepping away from it. What comes next for you, and what does succession planning look like for a legacy this massive?
well, I mean, we're always doing succession planning. I have a great president in Dirk Berkowitz. I have a great CFO in Derek Doak. My son Adam, he's 46 years old. He's the president of our adult. My daughter Ashley is very involved in marketing. My nephew Derek Skinner is, senior VP of operations. Kimberly, who you mentioned, is my niece. So, we're a family company,
Right.
and we have a lot of family. I think, my role is probably going to change over the course of the next couple of years. I'm 67 now. I think I will probably do less kind of CEO duties, but I have a busy mind. So, I just got done writing my sixth book. 30 Summers More was my previous book. Miracle Mornings After 50 was my last book. It became a bestseller, a USA
Yes.
bestseller. Yeah, there you go. LA Times bestseller. It's blown up on Amazon. And I'm writing another book called Where's My Purse? And it's an all-encompassing guide for families dealing with aging parents. And
Wow.
everything I've learned over 40 years about how to take care of your mom, when to take the car keys away, what if she's 80 years old and gets involved in a romantic relationship. I mean, everything, how to deal with dementia, how to deal with medications that are contraindicated. I mean, it's going to be an encyclopedia of how to deal with your aging parents, and I think it's going to be really, really a great book. And so I've been working on that for the last year and a half.
Wow.
Probably not come out for another year or so. But so, and I have a movie company called True Productions. I've done 13 documentaries, working on this one about the centenarians. So,
My Mother, My Son will
yeah,
be.
my mother, my son movie, that's on the docket. So
Stay tuned.
I don't get bored easy. So
I love that. Before we wrap up, I want to do a rapid fire segment. So I
sure,
will read the first half of a sentence and you must finish it with your rawest advice.
great.
And there will be some short answer questions here as well. Is that good?
Yeah, let's do it.
You ready?
Yeah.
The number one mistake most people make with building wealth is
The number one mistake is they're too trusting of people they don't know that well.
the biggest mistake I made when it came to leading a team was.
Well, I would say the biggest mistake I made in leading the team was when I was young. I thought being vulnerable was a weakness, and it's really a strength.
You've written many books like My Mother, My Son, and then The Miracle Morning for seniors after 50. If someone listening only reads one of your books, which one would it be and why?
Well, wow, they're so different. I mean, My Mother, My Son is autobiographical about my life and my journey and so on. So it's kind of an emotional read, but it's raw and vulnerable. And so, I mean, it's done very, very well. Miracle Mornings After 50 and the other book I wrote about longevity, 30 Summers More, are books that have done incredibly well in terms of preserving your lifespan and your health span. And so I've had people from all over the world reach out and thank me for those. So I can't really choose. It's like choosing my favorite child. So,
And so for everyone watching, I'll put links to all his books in the bio.
well, I think if you read My Mother, My Son, she had an expression. I think it's on the cover. She used to say, "Love all, trust few, always paddle your own canoe." And you can
Love that.
interpret that, some people interpret that negatively. I just think, you love everybody that you meet. The people you trust are a very small circle. And, always paddle your own canoe, which means that, hey, you can do anything by yourself. Sometimes people get too dependent on other people. I don't think I can start a business without a partner. I don't think I can do this without so and so. The reality is you're now of an age that you can do anything by yourself. You don't need other people. You just believe in yourself and be your own best cheerleader.
Wow. And from your newest, well, no, it's not your newest book anymore. From Miracle Morning After 50, the biggest mindset shift people over 15 need to make immediately is.
Well, I think people tend to think, God, I got my black balloons and my AARP card at 50 and my life's pretty much over. The reality is, we're entering into this unknown territory with AI and robotics and everything else. You may live to 130. And so take care of this vessel that you have now. And if you can live another 10 years, you'll probably get a bonus year of 20 years because of AI. So, it's not a matter, if you look in COVID years, People were dying in the US, men were dying at 74. I mean, you may live to 104 now.
And the real secret to living past 100 is,
I think it's a couple of things. First of all, you have to get sleep. If you cheat yourself on sleep, it's the biggest thing you can do to shorten your lifespan. The second thing is the longest longevity study known to man was done by Harvard. It's called the Grant Study. And they found that people who were happily married or had a partner, a happily partner at the age of 50 would add 7 years to their lifespan. So, having a community, having a great partner, getting good sleep, those are going to, help you progress to 100 and beyond.
wow, how many hours of sleep do you get
Well, it's
on
funny you
average?
funny you asked that. My average is about 7:20, but last night we had company over and I went to bed. I always go to bed exactly the same time, like 10:15. And last night I went to bed at like 11:45, and unfortunately I wake up at the same time. So I woke up at like 5:30 and I didn't go back to sleep. So I only got 6 hours last night and I feel it today. So I apologize if I'm a little off, but
It's
I'm,
all
I'm
good.
I'm an hour and 15 minutes off my schedule. So
You seem great to me. So, and then the last rapid fire question. Here's the thing nobody warns you about when you finally reach success.
well, there's an old expression, everybody loves the view, but nobody loves the climb, right? So I think the thing about success, and success is defined so many ways. It's just not about wealth. It's about relationships and admiration from other people and respect and so on. Wealth is really overrated. I mean, quite honestly, I love what you said. I think before we even started recording about, how you were chasing deals and accumulation of wealth and so on. When you have it, first of all, you realize everyone else wants it. It's almost harder to maintain it than it is to make it because I mean, and it's every day. If you call a plumber and don't tell him where you live and say, well, how much will this cost to fix this? The plumber says, well, $100. Then he comes to your house and gives you a bill for $350. And you're like, well, what happened? Well,
Yeah.
he'll give you some excuse that's all BS, but what happened is he saw your house and your car and the bill went up, right? Because it can't.
Yeah.
And so it happens on an everyday estimate that people, and it's no one's going to feel sorry for anyone who's wealthy. It's like, well, that's a rich man's problem. Boo hoo, shame on you. But I think the thing about wealth is it's super overrated and it consumes a lot of your energy. We get invited to a lot of big deals with celebrities and galas and charities and famous people. And, I've met 5 presidents. I've sat with the Pope. I mean, we've done some remarkable things, met the Dalai Lama twice. And our favorite thing to do is watch Netflix and eat popcorn in bed, and when we get
Simple things.
I think life has a way of taking you back to basics. And I get my greatest joy when I'm helping people and changing people's lives. That's
What
my
an
greatest
interesting
joy.
take.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to, what you're saying. I mean, I can make a lot of money one day, and then the next day I get a letter about how potato soup helped someone's life and changed their life, and they're eternally grateful. That letter means more to me than the dollars, right?
Yeah.
And it's really about helping people find their way. And I mean, I could have sold Aegis and made a super ton of money. I could have taken Aegis public. I chose to do none of those. And one of the reasons I chose to do none of those things is because it would take away the gratification I have of making someone's life better every day, whether it's a resident or a staff member, whoever, a family
Mhm.
member, that they get that gratification of knowing I had that soul to soul contact.
Yeah.
That the older you get, the more important that gets to be in your life. And if you realize that as you do at a young age, you'll be a rich man in many, many ways.
I appreciate the kind words, Jane. That's a very inspiring philosophy. I mean, I like similar to, last June, I got to like see everyone speak from Sam Altman to like Sri Ram, who's the ex-GP of A16Z, who was the White House AI policy advisor, and he follows me on Twitter. Like I had built I had built everything that I thought I had wanted, and then it was like Andre taking his own life that made me realize like I need to say no to like this short-term gratification, because it was like when investors, like other people, like saw that I turned down millions to like just go back to the longer view. A lot of people didn't understand, but to me, I realized like if I don't take the time now, money will come. I mean, I'm very confident in my abilities. I know that I have I'm intentional. And making that decision and hearing your philosophy, it really clicks together. And I wanna thank you for that.
Well, and I'll just end with this. You have to ask what role money has in your life, right? If the role of money in your life is to impress others, you're always going to be thirsty for more, right? Because there'll never be enough impressions. If it's to drive the nice car, and I've done all of this. Let me just plead guilty to this, all that. If it's to drive the nice cars and have the nice watches, it has the nice boat or the nice plane or the nice house or whatever, you'll never have enough. It won't be enough. So early on, you have to ask yourself, well, what role does money have in my life? What level am I comfortable at that I can get my mind off focusing on money and focusing on what's really important in life, right? And
Wow.
put those things in perspective, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you say, hey, if I lived in a 2,000 square foot house that cost me, in San Francisco, maybe it's $1 million, but and drove a Honda that was 5 years old, would I be happy? Okay, well, that's my lifestyle. And then, as you said, the money will come, and more money will come than you need. And then you have to figure out, well, what do I do with this? And again, most people don't learn that lesson until it's too late. And there's I don't know if you ever followed Taylor Sheridan. He did the Yellowstone series and all that, right? So he just did a show called Madison that just came
Mm.
out with Kurt Russell and a couple other actors. And the first couple episodes, you may watch it because I too just had someone who took their own life recently. And the first two episodes of that show just came out this week. I was trying to get it out of that what happened in my mindset, and I watched this show. It was very poetic what that show was teaching me. And I think sometimes the universe will bring you signs, messages when you most need them. You just have to avail yourself to listen to them. And so it was like I was watching the show
Listen
and
to
I'm like,
them.
yeah, I was watching the show and I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to get away from this. And this is putting all this right in my face, right? And it's the poignant scene in the show is where the star Kurt Russell is talking about life. And he's a very rich man that goes and visits his brother who lives in Montana, and he's sitting on this little modest cabin talking about life and what's really important. So if you get a chance, watch it.
I
'Cause
will.
I think you'll benefit from it.
That's an amazing suggestion. And sometimes the universe just gives us those like moments to, I'm a spiritual person. I think like everything happens for a reason, even though you may not understand that reason. And
Yeah.
and I really sincerely apologize for your loss. I
Well,
know
thank you.
exactly how that feels. So
Yeah.
really, Dwayne, this was incredible. Thank you for sharing not just like what you've built, but how you think. Viewers, anyone who's watching this, if you get value from this, share it with someone who needs to see it. Because I hope anyone watching like knows that this conversation is beyond just aging. It's really about how we live with both dignity and prosperity.